probably just shout, but it feels more official with the microphone, so we're going to roll this direction. I'm Amy O'Connor. I work at Jamf in Communications. I'm super excited to be introducing this session because I actually get to work with David on some of the ways we talk about data science within Jamf to Jamf. So without further ado, David Price-Thompson to tell you more about data science at Jamf.
I'm all good.
You got it.
Yeah, I've got one. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, hi everyone. I know it's a bit, people are still coming in, so don't worry, just come in, and I know it's just after lunch, so don't worry if there's not many people. But I'm actually going to start with a quick question, and I think some of the Jamfs will know the answer. It's that, how many of you realize that Jamf has a data science team? Anyone? Oh yeah, there's one there. Good. Well, the Jamfs should. So, well, on you. So what I'll try and do today is oh, I pressed the down button, didn't I? Thank you. What I'm going to try and do today is talk about, one, like how did we get here? How did data science actually come into the Jamf ecosystem? Then I'll kind of actually go back a little bit and actually describe how we look at data science, because many different organizations look at it quite differently. And then we'll talk about where it actually is in the products and where we're then planning to take it. So my name's David Price-Thompson, and I'm one of the leaders in engineering, and I kind of lead and discuss data science across the business, as well as coordinate some of the AI work that we've just started recently. So if you want to hear more about that, definitely make sure you go to a talk on Thursday covering the generative AI work at Jamf. So, imagine you've already got a bunch of questions, and here's some of the ones I'll go through. As I said, we'll go through like, when did this all happen? How did we get to data science at Jamf? How does it all work? Like, how do we like talk about data science? How do we sort of define it? Where is it in the products? And then where is it going to go next? Like, what other sort of parts of the product space will we see data science contributing to? So actually, the majority of the team that we have now actually came through the acquisition of Wandera. That was in 2021. But now we're definitely starting to tackle much more relevant stuff to all of Jamf, not just the stuff that we saw at Wandera. So back in 2016, which seems like so long ago now, we've had all sorts of global pandemics and various other things, we started a data science team at Wandera. It was only me and a few other people. But straight off the bat, we got a few big wins. One being in 2017, we built a basically industry-leading machine learning-driven phishing detection model, which was at the time faster than Google. So we would be able to detect phishing a couple minutes before you got that screen that would block you from Google. The next year, we very quickly discovered that building anything of this nature meant we had to be quite dynamic. So attackers very quickly realized, okay, they're doing something with URLs. We need to be a bit cleverer. So we started seeing puny code, SSL certificate phishing. So we had to be better as well. So we were agile and built a whole new model just for in 2018. Then in the following years, we expanded into many more novel approaches using things like Hilbert spaces to sort of map IP addresses and really understand how the content of the network is being used, and then moving into the more at-risk scoring area as well in 2020. And then we get to more recent history where Jamf acquired Wandera in 2021 for all these capabilities around security, mobile threat defense, network understanding, etc. And then finally, last year, we actually then started to contribute much more heavily to the edu market with some of our work around device uptime estimation. So that was a little view of how we got to here. But actually, the main question that I tend to get asked from anyone at Jamf and from customers is like, okay, well, what is data science? Like, how does it even, what does it mean to Jamf? And I find that two of the best sort of diagrams here are these two. So on the left here, we have this like Venn diagram. Everyone loves a Venn diagram right from school. And the best way to go through it is to go part by part. So here, to describe data science is something in the middle of mathematics. So that's all the machine learning, the AI, the statistical stuff, combined with computer science. That's like all the management of all the data, the processing of it, and then the domain expertise. And this is where in any organization, this would be different, right? So in Jamf, that's all the device management, that's all the security, that's all the networking stack, the applications, understanding all that data is something that I didn't know that before I came to Wandera and to Jamf, but I then had to learn it from all the sales executives, all the TAMs, all the developers, and that's where the real power of data science comes, bringing all those things together. The other question I tend to get is, like, what's the difference between data science and being a data analyst? And this diagram here tends to help with that. So they actually overlap really heavily, right? So on the left here, we have this area of analytic maturity, and we look at three main areas. It's hindsight, insight, and foresight. So hindsight is like, I have all this data, and I'm trying to understand something about the past. So I want to say, like, I want to answer questions like, how many devices do you have deployed at this time? How many detections is Jamf Protect making at this time? And that's great. Like, any analyst can do that. Really useful, definitely powerful statistical tools. In terms of what would be next in terms of maturity would be insight. So that's saying, OK, I understand all that stuff about the past, but I now want to try and predict something. I want to say, all right, can you tell me that this particular domain is phishing or something similar? And then last, but by no means least, we have foresight. And that's where you're then saying, OK, I understand the past. I understand that you're going to predict something. Now I want you to be able to suggest actionable things that I can do to be better in that area. And these last two areas of insight and foresight is where data science really kicks in and can at times overlap with being an analyst. Right. So I've talked about where we've been and how we got to here. And I've talked about, like, how we define data science and how it sort of differs from being just an analyst. But we also have created this model within Jamf of a data science chapter. And what that means is all of our data scientists have the same sort of skill set. We want to make sure they have the same understanding of tooling, of how they can implement these novel approaches to Jamf's data. But at the same time, we want to embed them within those products to make sure they then do deliver the things they want. So on the screen here, we have the vision of the chapter, which is around building that community, that knowledge base, but then driving that innovation at Jamf. Oh, there we go. And a lot of the tools that we use, they really differ and range vastly. We go from, like, databases with S3, with Vertica, Dremio, et cetera, through to languages like Python or Spark or Scala, all the way through to the very high-end open source products like MLflow and Selden Core, as well as you'll have heard a lot about OpenAI in the news around AI and large language models. All these kind of come together, and the real skill of being a data scientist is using all these different things at the right time to really give interesting insights and interesting foresight. So I'm just going to go through now some of the areas in which we've focused historically. So internally, it's quite a new area for us. We started off really focusing on embedding data scientists into products. But in the last year or so, we've started to come up with more use cases that are much more applicable to other Jamf teams. So a good example I'll give in a minute is around the product operations team and how we would support them. Jamf Protect, so this is our very traditional bread and butter area that we focus on. I've already talked about phishing and app scoring. And this is where the majority of our data scientists still work. And then last but no means least is Jamf Connect, which is, of course, a newer product at least for the data scientists. And later on, I'll give you a bit of a sneak peek into something that we're developing there. Now, you'll notice this isn't the full Jamf product suite, right? And that's because being in the nature of this sort of research and development, we can't just start with everything. We had to start somewhere. And we're slowly expanding out into various other parts of the product suite. So as I said already, traditionally we started in Jamf Protect. We've already expanded into Connect and into internal use cases. The hope is through some of this AI work and some of the existing data science work, we would move into more of the pro school use cases. And you'll see a lot of those in the generative AI talk I talked about that is on Thursday. So digging into some of the more niche use cases here, like where would you actually see some of this great work? As I already mentioned, there's one of my favorite use cases at the minute is in product operations, where customers like yourselves will send requests to us for certain features, and we get hundreds and hundreds of these all over the year. And we have to be able to filter them. We have to be able to go, right, all right, I want to send the correct Jamf Pro feature requests to that manager, right? And that's quite difficult when the text is free form. You could just enter anything into the feature request, and it might not actually be clearly relevant to that certain area. So we've built a machine learning model, an NLP model, that can read that description and go, I think this is, with some probability, Jamf Pro. Give it to that product manager. And we're currently in the feedback process for that. There are a few more examples here, but I won't go through them. But these are past projects where we've really tried to help those Jamf teams to really manage that data. And in general, it tends to be that same sort of thing. Like they have too much information. We need to really scope them in onto the interesting information. In Jamf Protect, I've spent a lot of time here with the product manager. They didn't want to write specific projects because people get a bit too excited. So we try to look at the protect space in these 4 big boxes. So that's application risk, network risk, customer risk, and content classification. And I'll give you some examples of all of those. For the network risk, I've already talked about it. It's the phishing detection and those sort of things where we're looking at those domains. We're looking at those instances where we have detections that we really want to understand. So phishing is one, cryptojacking is another, and we have some really good, not just threat understanding and intelligence through our Threat Labs team, but the combination of that with our data scientists is very powerful. Customer risk is projects like the customer risk scoring that we have and computer risk scoring that we're currently planning on looking at. And then content classification is something that's very important to the education market around certain categories that are dangerous or adult or gambling, such things that want to be set by default. And there's a lot of really good lists for this. But actually, what data science does here that's really exciting is to really cover that long tail of data that those lists can't do, and can do it dynamically and more up to date. So we had a lot of good work with creating a machine learning model for the adult category in the last year or so. I'm just going to dig in quickly into some of the more exciting work in application risk, in particular in a collaboration we have with the macOS Threat Labs team. So the problem that they posed to us was they see a lot of macOS malware, and they're not super happy with how they're labeled, basically. They know that there are a bunch of families that they want to know about, and they get that from a few third-party vendors. But then when they see a new malware sample, they really want to know, okay, is this close to or connected to an existing family, or is this something entirely new that we then have to really dig into, right? And their hypothesis was, we think with the scale of data we have and the knowledge and intelligence we have, we can at least understand how similar this new malware is to those existing families that we have a good understanding of. So we actually posed them 2 proof of concepts, one around the application's metadata, and the other around using the literal files and the literal code, converting those into vectors, and comparing those to each other. And what you start to get are these interesting sort of maps of families all together in a 3D space that you can then say, yeah, those are very similar, you can color them, you can make it all very pretty. And we're already seeing that the Threat Labs team are starting to use them in actually different ways than we expected. So that's quite an exciting one. Sadly, I can't show you screenshots, but yeah, that's a good little internal collaboration. And then, of course, actually, where do we see this in the product? So for those of you that don't know, this is Radar. And you can see, actually, we've always tried to expose a lot of this information to customers where we can. One of the key areas is in Miriam Analytics. It's very hard to see in this screenshot, but you can see some of the detections that are made around phishing. In particular, this spider diagram, which I'm sure you've all seen in various marketing pieces. That's phishing, and this is app scoring down here. We've always felt that it's much more beneficial for data scientists to really understand where their work is used And so seeing it in the product is actually really important to us. And to make it explainable. So we've actually had a lot of feedback from customers around what these diagrams mean and how they relate to the actual machine learning model. And so we always strive for some level of explainability of our models, which is actually not a simple problem at all. You're going from quite a multi-dimensional space to then, okay, what does this mean? Like for me, like can I really understand what the data is saying and what the machine learning model is saying? As I mentioned, with Jamf Connect, I'll give you a little sneak peek in a minute, but we haven't quite yet released the work in Jamf Connect. So, what could be next? I talked a lot earlier about these 4 boxes for Jamf Protect, and where they're actually moving to now is actually to consolidate a lot of the information. So, phishing, as I already mentioned, is a very dynamic space. Attackers have changed the way they look at it. We had a machine learning model that focused on the URL. That isn't good enough anymore, and we've seen how that has decayed over time. So now they're trying to look at more about what's actually going on behind the scenes and trying to really look at the content, the HTML, the screenshots of the sites. So that's just one small example, but that's one detection where we've had to adapt. The same is going on for many of the other attacks. And similarly for Jamf Protect, they really want to, back to that previous point around explainability, they want to really make sure that what we're showing to customers makes sense. So there's a lot of work going on there around, okay, you know, we've shown you all this phishing stuff. What does it actually mean for your estate? Like, what would be next steps? Or, oh, we're scoring your applications and we think they're high risk. So what? Like, what's next with that? So that's what a lot of the work that Jamf Protect are looking at. And maybe there could be some other AI initiatives there as well. And here we go. Here's what I've been alluding to the whole time. So this is a little video of a mock-up for what we're calling ZTNA app discovery. Now, the problem that we got posed here by the Jamf Connect team was, for those that use Jamf Trust or private access, when you first set up this product, you have to define a bunch of policies. You have to say, all right, I've got an application and it has all these domains under it and I want my users to use it. That's essentially what you're saying. But admins who aren't very technical or don't know this information about their estate, they won't be able to do that, right? So we have some defaults that are quite good. We have like GitHub, Microsoft 365, Google, etc. We know those, but each customer will be using their devices in different ways, using different sort of applications that all use different services underneath them. So what we have defined and created is an algorithm that will, after a given time of enrollment, you can set like a really broad wildcard policy, and it will collect the data and then come back to you with some recommendations that will be like, here's an application and a list of domains underneath it. And hopefully the video will play. So this is just a mock-up. This isn't live. This isn't in production yet. But it would look a bit like this, like a bunch of apps underneath which you'd have a bunch of domains, potentially quite a lot of domains, that are sorted by how often they're visited, the number of devices that access it, and then you're able to very quickly copy those into a new policy and say, yep, I think this makes sense. Now I'm going to set this as my app policy, and we go from there. So you can see here the person doing this has copied it, and now they're able to define their ZTNA app policy. Great. Oh, okay, cool. That's the end. So, well, thank you for listening. I hope I've given you a bit of an insight into where we've come from with data science, how we look at it and view it, and like where we're going to go next. So if you do have any questions, I think Amy does have a microphone / potentially via the app. But if not, you can come down to the Jamf booth. I'm there showing off some of our AI work. So do come along, ask it a few questions. And I also have another session, as I said, on generative AI on Thursday. If you're remote, find me on LinkedIn or send me an email. Feel free to ask me anything there.
All right, awesome. Did anyone submit questions through the app? Okay, great, because I'm not even going to touch this iPad then. I'm just going to look at all of you and ask if you have any questions.
It's okay if you don't.
It's okay if you don't.
And if you're too scared, I can come down and you can ask me.
I was going to say, also, we've got the room. So if anybody wants to come up and have a conversation,
Yeah.
I have volunteered you for that. I can talk to you about virtually anything but data science if you'd like to do that instead. But no, thanks y'all for being here, and we'll see you out in the hallways. Come say hi.